We already had it yesterday. That was the sentence. 9 words. No punctuation in her voice. No pause for breath or thought. Lara said it the way you mention a forecast or that the mail came early. I was holding the phone with my left hand, a dish rag in the other, still damp from wiping down the counter. The morning sun had just started to warm the kitchen window. I hadn't even made my second cup of coffee yet. I looked at the wrapped gift beside the toaster. Cream paper hand-tied ribbon. Inside a vintage cookbook she used to flip through as a girl. I had kept it all these years, knowing one day it might matter again. Oh, I managed throat dry. I didn't know it was moved. It wasn't, she said lightly. Gavin's parents just sort of planned it. We pulled it together kind of last minute. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I could hear clinking in the background, cutlery maybe. Laughter. Her voice wasn't hurried, just distracted. Not guilty. Not apologetic. Just busy with something more important than me. I see, I said. There was a pause. She didn't rush to fill it. Well, Lara added, it was small. You know, casual. I looked down at the dress I'd laid across the back of the chair last night. The same one Lara once said made me look elegant but approachable. I had steamed it before bed, curled my hair in the morning, polished the shoes I hadn't worn since my retirement party. Now, they sat by the door untouched. Anyway, she said, and I could tell she was about to wrap up. Thanks again for all your help lately. Couldn't have done it without you. My mouth opened, but no words came. She wasn't talking about this party. She meant the tuition, the car, the down payment, the groceries I'd quietly covered when she was short, the money I had wired 2 weeks ago when she said their card had been maxed out from venue deposits. I should get going, she said. Love you. Love you too? I said, though it felt strange on my tongue. She hung up before I could say anything else. I stood in the kitchen, the gift still on the counter, ribbon slipping slightly from the corner. I didn't move. Not yet. My fingers were stiff. The room felt colder than it had a moment ago. The refrigerator hummed behind me. A breeze came through the window, rustling the edge of the receipt I had left by the fruit bowl. A catering bill, one I had paid without asking questions. I didn't cry. Not then. I placed the phone gently on the table. Sat down across from the dress. Smoothed out the fabric. The silence filled the space in a different way now, like something had shifted, but only I noticed. I reached for my coffee, now cold. I opened my laptop and clicked on Lara's profile. There it was. A carousel of filtered photos, soft lighting champagne flutes, string lights overhead. Her and Gavin smiling. Gavin's parents beside them, arms linked. Her caption couldn't have asked for a more perfect night. Thank you to my second family for making it so magical. Second family. I read it again. Then again. Not a line. Not a mention. Not even a quiet nod to where she came from. Where she had been raised. Who had taught her how to tie her shoes, balance her checkbook, drive a stick shift. There was a comment under the photo. Darla Grant. You two are the most perfect pair. So proud of you both. Lara's reply. I'm so lucky to have you as my mom now. I sat back in the chair. The ribbon slipped completely off the gift. The ribbon had come undone, but I didn't retie it. The box sat on the counter, same place it had been all morning. Same place it had been the night before, when I stood at the sink ironing the dress with one hand and wrapping the gift with the other. I'd found the paper in a drawer I rarely opened, off-white flecked with silver dots, the kind I used for her birthdays when she still lived at home. The cookbook inside wasn't just old, it was hers. She used to sit cross-legged on the kitchen floor, flipping through the worn pages while I made dinner. Her fingers were always drawn to the dog-eared ones, cinnamon rolls, lemon bars, a peach cobbler we never quite got right. She told me once that she'd take it with her when she had a place of her own. So I can still feel like home smells like something warm. She never asked for it again. I kept it in the same cupboard for years, waiting for the moment it would mean something again. Last night, I tied it closed with twine from my craft box. Smoothed the edges. Left a note inside folded neatly on the first page, for when your own kitchen starts to feel like yours. Now it sat, unopened, forgotten. Just a quiet box on the counter while the rest of the world moved forward without me. I refreshed the app on my phone. The post was still there. 3 photos. 1 boomerang. The candles flickered in motion. Glasses clinked. Lara beamed up at Gavin, hair curled just like I used to do it for her high school dances. The caption read, "Couldn't have asked for a more perfect night. Thank you to my second family for making it so magical." I stared at the phrase second family. She didn't say she missed us. She didn't say we couldn't come. She didn't say anything at all. Comments piled in. Friends, co-workers, people I didn't recognize. All hearts and fire emojis. Congratulations and so happy for you both. Gavin's mom had posted a carousel of her own. Her dress was red bold. She stood beside Lara in nearly every shot. There was one photo that caught me off guard. A table centerpiece, tall and elegant. Hydrangeas and tea roses in crystal vases. I had paid for the florist. Lara sent me the invoice 3 weeks ago, said she needed help covering it just in case they went with that venue. I wired the money without a second thought. I zoomed in on the glass stemware. It looked like the set I gave her when she moved in with Gavin. I remembered wrapping each one in dish towels so they wouldn't rattle in the box. I set the phone down and looked again at the package beside me. The edges were too crisp. The tape hadn't been touched. It looked like it had been wrapped for a stranger. I walked it back to the hallway past the chair with the untouched dress, slid the gift gently onto the top shelf of the coat closet above the scarves. No one wears in this part of Oregon unless it's holiday photos or windstorms. Downstairs again, I poured out the cold coffee, made a fresh cup, sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing for a while. I didn't tell anyone what happened. There wasn't really anyone to tell. I listened to the slow tick of the wall clock, the faint hum of the refrigerator. And then, because I didn't know what else to do, I opened the drawer and pulled out the old manila envelope where I kept the bank transfers, printed every screenshot, every thanks mom that came with a Venmo request, stapled each one into the folder. First page read January, tuition last installment. Next line, February, car insurance full 6 months. Then March, security deposit for the apartment. It was longer than I remembered. By the time I got to the bottom, I was already reaching for another sheet of paper. I read it 3 times. The comment was sitting there, tucked under a photo of Lara and Darla, the 2 of them side by side, in a sunlit kitchen, hands on a cake platter, laughing like they'd known each other forever. It wasn't the photo that caught me. It was what Lara wrote beneath it. "I'm so lucky to have you as my mom now." No emoji, no qualifiers, no like a mom to me, just the word clean and clear. I scrolled back to the top of the post to make sure it wasn't a mistake, something I was misunderstanding. But it was still there, as certain as a signature. I sat there blinking hard, not because I was surprised, but because she wasn't even trying to soften the blow. She didn't think it was a blow. To her, this was just a natural evolution. I stood and walked to the sink, rinsed my mug out slowly. The water ran hotter than I expected, and I watched the steam rise for a few seconds before turning the tap off. My hands felt too still, too steady, like my body hadn't caught up with the sting yet. Back at the table, I opened the folder again. It didn't comfort me, but it gave me something to hold. For a long time, I believed the title of mother was untouchable, that no matter what happened between us, arguments, distance, time, I would always be that place she returned to when the world felt uncertain, that I didn't need to be loud or flashy or competitive. I just had to be steady. But steady can become invisible. And invisibility, I was learning, doesn't earn loyalty. I thought about the time I stayed with her in the emergency room when she broke her wrist at 16. She had refused to let the nurse take her back without me. Sat on the edge of the hospital bed, pale and trembling, and reached for my hand before they cleaned the wound. She didn't want Gavin. She didn't want a friend. She wanted her mom. That memory felt foreign now, like it belonged to someone else. I opened the group photo from the engagement dinner again. Gavin's parents were in the center, arms around Lara. Darla's smile was wide and sure, her other hand gently resting on Lara's back. I recognized that touch. It was the one you give when you believe someone belongs to you. I wondered when it had happened. When did the shift become permanent? Was it the brunch? The shared Pinterest boards? The way Lara started repeating Darla's phrases like they were her own? Or had it been happening longer than I realized? In quiet increments, I closed the laptop. No one had taken anything from me, not exactly. She gave it away. Willingly. And I was the only one left pretending it hadn't happened. I walked over to the closet, reached for the box. Thought maybe I would drive it over, drop it at her porch, let it speak for itself. But my hand stopped just short of the ribbon. She wouldn't open it. Not now. Maybe not ever. And I wasn't going to force it. I left the box where it was, and instead walked upstairs, pulled open the drawer, where I kept Lara's old schoolwork, some dried flowers from her senior recital, and a photo from the day she got into college, her arms around me, her face beaming. I slid the folder in beside it, not because it belonged there, but because I didn't want it in the kitchen anymore. Downstairs, my phone buzzed with a new message. Hey, can you cover our water bill this month? Something came up with Gavin's job again. No hi, Mom. No sorry, again about the dinner. Just another hand held out expecting something to land in it. I turned off the screen. Then I opened my laptop again and pulled up the last bank statement. It didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic moment, no slammed door, no name-calling or ultimatum. Just a slow drift. A soft erosion, the kind you don't notice until you look up one day and realize the shoreline is gone. The first time she called me Ramona, it was in a text. Ramona, do you remember where you stored the paperwork for the lease? I stared at the name for a full minute before answering. Told myself it was a slip. Maybe she was rushing. Maybe autocorrect changed it. I answered the question, skipped the correction. I didn't want to seem sensitive. But then it happened again. And again. Then came the email. Something about confirming a payment I'd made on her behalf. She signed it. Thanks, R. Not Mom. Not even Love Lara. Just an initial like we were colleagues trading invoices. I never confronted her about it. Part of me didn't want to give it the weight of a conversation. Another part of me feared she'd shrug and say, I just thought it was easier. That's how the distance always started with her, under the banner of ease. It's just easier this way. I went back through our old texts a few nights ago. Back when she first moved out, she used to send me photos of her meals, her plants, the view from her first apartment balcony. Mom, look at this, miss. Can you remind me how to make your chicken soup? Now the messages were different. Sparse. Transactional. Need help with car registration. Can you Venmo $300 for security deposit? Did the check clear yet? She never asked how I was. Never called just to talk. The few times she did pick up the phone, it was because something had gone wrong. I used to fill in the gaps with updates. Little things. Told her when I painted the hallway. Sent her a photo of the new tulips blooming out front. She didn't respond, so I stopped sending them. And still, when I hear her voice on a voicemail, there's a part of me that sits up straighter. Hopes for a flicker of the old warmth. But the tone is always clipped, like she's mid-task. Like I'm one more item on a long list she's racing to check off. The last time we saw each other in person was 2 months ago. Gavin's sister was having a baby shower, and Lara had mentioned it so casually, Oh, you could come if you want. It's mostly her family, though. I shouldn't have gone, but I did. I told myself it mattered. That showing up still counted. When I arrived, I stood by the gift table unsure where to go. Lara didn't see me at first. She was sitting on the couch beside Darla, whispering and laughing. At one point, she nudged her and said, "Stop it, Mom," in that half-scolding, half-affectionate tone. I waited for her to correct it, to glance my way. Acknowledge me. She didn't. When she finally walked over, she gave me a light hug, quick and polite. "Thanks for coming, Ramona," she said. And then she was gone again, back into that warm orbit where I no longer belonged. Later that night, I sat in my car outside the grocery store engine, off headlights dimmed. I opened the voice memo app and whispered, "When did I stop being Mom?" I didn't play it back. I just saved it and slid the phone into my purse. At home, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat on the porch in the dark. The street was quiet. My hands wrapped around the mug, still waiting for a call that wouldn't come. The next morning, the water bill reminder arrived in my inbox, but it wasn't addressed to me. It was Lara forwarding her own notice with just 3 words. "Can you cover?" I wasn't invited. Not directly. Lara had mentioned the baby shower in passing, almost like she'd slipped up. We were on the phone going over a payment for a new insurance policy on Gavin's car, something she said needed to be under someone more stable, meaning me. I'd just given her the information when she let it slip. Anyway, Gavin's mom is putting together the shower next weekend, she said. "Should be cute." I waited a beat. "Oh," I said. "Is it just family?" She hesitated. "Well, mostly her side. It's kind of her thing, but if you really want to come, I'm sure it's fine." "If you really want to come, not I'd love for you to be there, not I saved you a seat." I almost said no. Almost told her I was busy or that I didn't want to impose. But I went. I put on a soft blouse and sensible shoes and brought a carefully wrapped gift, a white blanket I'd crocheted over the last 2 weeks. I wasn't even sure why I'd started it. Maybe just the rhythm of the thread between my fingers gave me something to hold. When I arrived, the party was already in full swing. Voices and laughter spilled out onto the porch. A little girl ran past me in sparkly sandals. I smiled, adjusted my grip on the gift bag, and stepped inside. No one greeted me. No one offered to take my coat or show me where to sit. I found Lara in the living room, perched on the edge of the couch beside Darla, the two of them passing around cupcakes like they were co-hosts. Lara saw me and smiled, but not the kind that reaches the eyes. "Oh, hey," she said. "You made it." "I did," I said, placing the gift on the table. Darla walked over a few minutes later and introduced me to someone as Emily's mom, then laughed and said, "But we all know who the real moms are, the ones doing the heavy lifting." She said it with a wink. It was meant to be light. Lara didn't say a word. She didn't laugh, but she didn't stop it either. She just sipped her drink, turned slightly away, and let it pass. I sat near the back after that. Took a paper cup of punch and made small talk with a woman I didn't know who kept referring to me as Gavin's mom's friend. I didn't correct her. I didn't feel like I had the energy to explain who I was anymore. At the end of the party, Lara came over briefly and said, "Thanks for coming, Ramona." I know it was kind of their thing. Then she hugged me, light, impersonal, and turned to help with the decorations. I drove home in silence. I didn't turn the radio on. The blanket was never opened. The next morning, I saw the photos online. One of Lara and Darla arranging the gift table. Another of Lara holding the crocheted blanket still folded in its packaging, smiling wide, but not at me. The caption read, "So grateful to the women who showed up and made this day beautiful." I clicked off the screen, went to the closet, found the manila folder where I'd been adding things. Receipts, emails, payment confirmations. That day, I added something new, A screenshot of the party photos, the ones with everyone smiling where no one remembered to set a chair for me. I wired the money on a Tuesday morning. $10,000 transferred without hesitation. Lara said they were just shy of what they needed for the deposit. Gavin's parents had already chipped in, and she didn't want to look less stable. That was how she phrased it. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't ask why they hadn't saved more. I just sent the money and told her to let me know when the papers were signed. She texted back a single heart emoji and nothing else. I didn't expect flowers or a handwritten thank you, but I thought foolishly that maybe we'd be part of the memory, that when she thought about that house, she'd remember who made it possible, who quietly removed money from savings meant for retirement, not real estate, who didn't ask for credit, just consideration. Weeks passed and then the photos came. They weren't sent to me. I saw them because someone else tagged me. A neighbor from years ago, the kind who still called me Mrs. Alcott, even though I'd asked her not to. She commented on Lara's post and added my name underneath like she thought I'd missed it. I hadn't. Lara stood in the middle of her new dining room, beaming. Gavin stood just behind her, one hand on her waist. But the real focus of the image was the table, a long walnut piece with matching chairs and gold-rimmed glasses already set. The table from Grant's parents really made it feel like home, she wrote. Not a word about the house. Not a sentence about how they got the keys. Just a caption soaked in praise for people who'd bought her furniture. I reread it twice. Then I clicked through the rest of the photos: freshly painted walls, floating shelves, a fireplace lit for effect. One image showed Lara lighting candles on the dining table. Another showed her hugging Grant's mother in front of it. In none of them did I appear. Not even in spirit. The next day she texted again. Hey, can you help with appraisal costs? Came up faster than we expected. Like the last 10,000 had never been sent. Like this next expense would also go unquestioned. I didn't reply. I closed the app, walked to the cabinet and pulled out the manila folder I'd started filling months ago. It had grown thick: bank statements, Venmo screenshots, emails, loan agreements that were never really treated like loans. I added a new page, the receipt from the wire transfer. Below it, I jotted a single line. Dining table made it feel like home. I sat at the kitchen table, the one I've had for 20 years. It's scratched in places. The corner leg wobbles if you lean on it too hard. But this table has held birthday cakes and report cards, quiet breakfasts, and late-night coffee. This table heard Lara's first college acceptance, her first real heartbreak. And it's still here. I ran my hand across the wood. I didn't need walnut or gold trim. I didn't need candles. I just wanted to be remembered. But Lara had found a new version of home. One that came with photo ops and matching mugs. One where I didn't exist. The phone buzzed again. Another message. We're thinking of hosting soon. Would love for you to see the place. No mention of what had been asked before. No apology. Just an invitation buried in politeness. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the drawer where I kept the old mail and pulled out a sealed envelope, a card I'd bought weeks ago but never mailed. A housewarming note written in my neatest hand. Inside was a check, still blank. I tore it in half, then again, and I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat alone, listening to the quiet. It started with one receipt, a payment for Lara's last semester of college, $380 wired on the first of the month. I remember I was late paying my own electric bill that week. I'd never told her that. I found it in a stack of old statements while sorting through tax files. I almost tossed it, but something made me stop. I smoothed it flat on the table and stared at the date. I could still hear her voice trembling with panic. Mom, if I miss the deadline, I'll lose the credits. I paid it within the hour. That receipt went into the folder first. Then came the rent checks. I hadn't kept them on purpose. But the online banking records were easy to find. The monthly transfers always marked LA rent, always rounded up, because she said she couldn't cover the internet or the trash bill that month, or parking was way higher than we thought. I printed them one by one methodically. Tuition, rent, the car repair when she hit a curb and bent the axle, the down payment, the insurance, the time her phone was stolen and she needed a new one just to work, the $40 here and there when her account dipped too low and she got hit with fees. Every single one had a date, a name, a quiet moment where I'd stepped in without being asked twice. And every time I told myself this was what mothers do. But now, as I watched the folder fill page by page, I realized how much I'd erased myself to be convenient. How I'd never once made a list, not until I stopped hearing, "Thank you." Not until I became invisible. I wrote one line across the front of the folder in thick black ink. What love paid for. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I just kept printing. The file grew heavy, tangible. It was more than money. It was time. It was space. It was my own life rearranged around her needs like furniture that kept getting moved to make everyone else more comfortable. I thought of all the times she'd said, "I'll pay you back when things settle down." They never did. Or the times she promised. "Next time it's on me." There was never a next time. Once when she was a teenager, she came home crying because someone at school said her shoes looked cheap. I remember taking my lunch break early and driving 40 minutes to get the pair she'd wanted. They were on sale, but still too expensive. I used my grocery money and stretched the pantry for the next 2 weeks. She wore them like armor, never knew the cost. It wasn't the shoes. It was what they meant. I had been her safety net, her fallback, her emergency contact always. But safety nets fray, and this one was worn thin. I slipped the folder into the drawer under the printer. It made a dull, final sound as it landed thick with history. No one had bothered to remember but me. Then I opened my banking app. Another transfer request. This time, "Hey, Gavin's parents are covering the new mattress. Can you get the bed frame?" I stared at the message. I didn't respond. I just took a photo of the screen and added it to the folder. The call came just after 7. I was halfway through my first cup of coffee sitting at the kitchen table with the morning sun cutting across the floor in quiet, familiar lines. I'd just opened the window, let the September breeze drift in. For once, the day felt still. The phone buzzed across the table. I saw Lara's name, but I didn't answer right away. It buzzed again, then again. By the third ring, I picked up. "Mom," she said, breathless. "The credit card didn't go through. I'm at the register. They said it was declined." I didn't say anything at first. I let her words hang in the air. Her voice was fast, impatient, not worried, not kind, just inconvenienced. The tone I'd come to recognize as the one reserved for me. "I'm standing here, Mom. It's over $300. You know they always expect me to cover this part." I took a slow sip from my cup. "I took you off the account," I said calmly. Silence. "What?" she snapped. "I removed you last week. You're no longer an authorized user." Another pause. I could hear movement in the background, someone sighing behind her, maybe a cashier or Gavin. I imagined her looking around, embarrassed. "You didn't even tell me." I looked down at the table. A tiny scratch near the corner caught the light. I ran my thumb over it. "No," I said. "I didn't." "Are you serious?" she hissed. "You've always covered this." "I'm already here. I don't have another card on me." "I understand." Her voice rose. "So what am I supposed to do? I'm sure you'll figure it out." That line, the one she'd thrown at me dozens of times over the years, "I'm sure you'll figure it out." When the rent was late, when the car broke down, when Gavin's mother didn't return my texts. Always delivered with a smile, always followed by silence. Now, it was mine. "You can't just cut me off like this," she said. It's not fair. Fair. I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty, but out of the sheer absurdity. Fair had never been part of this equation. You didn't invite me to your engagement dinner, I said quietly. You didn't mention me when you thanked your second family. You call someone else Mom in public now. And yet, here I am, still footing the bill? That's not what this is about. It's not, I asked. She didn't respond. I've never said no, I continued. Not once. But I think I've earned the right to stop saying yes. The background noise on her end dropped. The panic gave way to something else, maybe confusion, maybe realization. I didn't think it mattered to you, she said. I could have said a dozen things in that moment. I could have told her about the folder, about the blank check I tore up, about the days I spent sitting quietly in this house, waiting for her to remember who kept the lights on. But I didn't. I have to go, I said. My coffee's getting cold. She didn't hang up. She stayed on the line, waiting for something more, but I set the phone down on the table and let her listen to nothing at all. The call ended itself. Outside, the breeze shifted. A single leaf fluttered in through the open window and landed near my coffee cup. I didn't move it. Instead, I got up, walked to the desk, opened the drawer, and added a new note to the folder. Scepters 12. Card declined. I said no. It wasn't the photos themselves that hurt. It was the captions. Napa, Lake Tahoe, a beach house in Monterey. Each image polished, perfectly timed. Sunsets through wine glasses, poolside laughter group, hugs on snowy porches. And Lara, always centered, always glowing. One photo showed her holding a mug that said, "Best daughter-in-law ever." Another had Grant's mother and Lara wrapped in identical scarves, holding a sign that read, "Our annual girls' weekend." In one of the Christmas photos, they were all in matching pajamas, red and white plaid cocoa mugs in hand. Grant's father wore a Santa hat. His mother held up a tray of sugar cookies. Lara was curled between them, smiling. The caption read, "Family is everything. Grateful to be surrounded by so much love." I read it 3 times. There were no mentions of me, not even a tag, not even a hint that she came from anywhere else. I scrolled through the comments like a person picking at a bruise. Gavin's cousins, his mother's friends, all commenting, "So lucky to have you in the family. You two are the sweetest pair." And Lara replied to each one cheerfully. When someone asked who took the photo, she replied, "Mom did, of course." I stared at those words for a long time. Not me, her. I closed the app and set my phone down. It wasn't just exclusion anymore. It was replacement. A complete rewrite. When had I become a footnote in my own daughter's life? I stood up and walked to the hallway. On the narrow shelf by the door sat a small frame, Lara's 5th grade Christmas photo. She was missing one front tooth and had worn a velvet dress I bought secondhand and stitched up the hem myself. She had smiled so wide her eyes squinted. I used to send her little holiday packages when she was in college. Hand-knit scarves, peppermint cookies, a card with her name in cursive. Sometimes she called, sometimes she didn't. But now I didn't even get a mention. That Christmas, she sent a single text, "Merry Christmas." Hope you're staying warm. No call, no video, no invitation. I only knew where she was because she posted a reel her and Grant's family playing charades by a fireplace. There was even a second video, Lara slow dancing in the living room with Grant's dad, while his mother clapped in the background. And me, I made a pot of chili that night, ate half of it, froze the rest. I kept the lights low, watched the snow fall from the kitchen window, and didn't touch my phone. There was no need. It had become clear. I wasn't a priority. I wasn't a presence. Just a purse she occasionally opened. A contact with a balance and no boundaries. That night, I found myself whispering something into the dark. I didn't even realize I'd said it until it was already in the air. If I disappeared, Would she even notice? The silence that followed was too honest to ignore. The next morning, I didn't make coffee right away. I sat in the chair by the front window and just listened to the house. No footsteps, no laughter, no one calling for me. And still, it was more peaceful than trying to compete for a space I was never given. I opened my laptop, logged into the bank, checked the linked accounts, and started making a list of what needed to change. She said it lightly, like it was a joke. "You're overthinking again, Mom. It's not a big deal." But it was always that tone, dismissive, tired, like I was a faucet left dripping background noise she learned to tune out. I'd called to ask if they were coming by for Thanksgiving this year. I hadn't brought it up in months. I had made a point of not asking about the engagement party or the housewarming or the Tahoe trip. I kept things polite, soft, measured. So when I finally asked about a single holiday, I thought maybe, just maybe, she'd sound happy to hear it. But all she said was, "Grant's mom wants to host again this year. She already ordered the turkey." It's kind of tradition now. Their tradition. And when I didn't respond right away, just quietly said, "Oh," I heard her exhale. The same way someone sighs when they realize the dryer didn't fully dry the towels. That's when she said it. "You're overthinking again." Again. As if this had become my brand melodrama. I didn't argue. I just listened. Let her talk about the centerpiece Darla was planning. The matching napkin rings, the cranberry chutney. She used the word cozy 5 times. I remembered how Lara used to say that word when she climbed into my bed on cold mornings. "It's so cozy here, Mom." Now the word belonged to someone else. She hung up after saying, "We'll try to swing by after, but no promises." I stared at the phone screen until it dimmed. Then I opened the drawer where I kept old cards, birthday ones she'd drawn when she was young. Stick figures of me holding giant mugs of coffee hearts floating in the air. Best mom ever. I'd kept them all. Apparently, she hadn't. I stood and walked to the living room. The blanket on the couch still had the soft lavender scent she liked when she lived here. I used to refresh it for her before visits. Now it just sat folded, unused. Last Christmas she'd sent a text. No call, no photos, no knock at the door. "Merry Christmas. Hope you're staying warm." It was a message you could send to anyone. This was a pattern, not an accident. Skipped holidays, late replies, unreturned calls. Next time that never came. I had learned to smile through it, to give her the benefit of the doubt. She was busy. She was building a life. She was figuring things out. But there's a difference between being busy and being done. And I was finally starting to see which one it was. That night, I boiled pasta 8 at the table alone. No centerpiece, no chutney, just quiet. I didn't text her again. I didn't ask about Christmas plans. I knew the answer before I even picked up the phone. I washed the dishes, dried my hands, and walked to the file drawer. Opened the folder. Added a new page, November. Skipped again. Called it tradition. Then I shut the drawer and turned off the kitchen light. She could call me sensitive. She could call me dramatic. But the lights don't lie. They either turn on for you or they don't. It came on a Thursday afternoon. The mail had been light that day, just a local circular, a catalog I never subscribed to, and then an envelope that didn't look like it belonged in my stack at all. Heavy cardstock, pale gold trim, my name printed in scripted ink, not handwritten. No return address. But I knew. I sat down at the table before opening it. My hands were steady. Inside was a thick cream invitation pressed with raised lettering. Lara's name, Grant's name. The venue printed in elegant serif font. A garden ceremony followed by a formal dinner. And right there in the center, a line that almost made me laugh. "With love and respect, you are invited to witness the union." Respect. They used the word like it meant something. I turned the card over. no note, no added line of warmth, just the same polite language you'd send to a distant coworker or your accountant. It wasn't personal, it was strategic. They needed me there for photos, for appearances, for the illusion that nothing had cracked along the way. But I had the cracks. I had every one of them printed, dated, filed. Receipts for tuition, utilities, repairs. Messages left unanswered. Holidays skipped. A seat that was never saved. And now, this. A gesture too little and far too late. I walked to the printer drawer and opened the folder, pulled back the cover labeled, "What Love Paid For." Tucked the invitation inside between the car repair invoice and the house deposit slip. It didn't deserve its own space. I closed the folder gently. They had made their choices. They had built a new family tree and placed me in the footnotes. I was done watering a garden I was never invited to sit in. That night, I lit a candle, poured a glass of water, and let the quiet fill the corners of the room. There was no debate left in me, no lingering doubt. The invitation didn't erase what came before it. It only confirmed it. I didn't call to say thank you. I didn't RSVP. Instead, I opened my email, typed the name of my lawyer into the search bar. It was time to revise the will. I didn't announce it. I didn't write a long message or explain myself. I simply made the call. The locksmith arrived at the summer house 2 days later, early before the sun had burned off the mist over the water. He was kind, efficient, didn't ask questions. Just nodded when I handed him the old brass keys and said, "All of them, front side garage." Deadbolts, too. By mid-morning, it was done. Lara had used that house like it was hers. For long weekends with Grant, for retreats when city life wore her out, for bridal planning brunches I was never invited to. She didn't ask anymore, just sent a text like a courtesy. Heading to the lake this weekend. Will clean up after there were wine glasses left in the sink last time. A half-eaten bag of chips on the porch. The fridge still held an oat milk carton, with her name sharpied on the side. I'd stopped checking after a while. Stopped feeling like I had a right to ask. But that morning, after the locks clicked into place, I stood in the doorway and breathed in the clean, still air. Mine again. There was no fight. No loud boundary drawn in chalk. Just a quiet line made of action. She didn't need to know right away. She'd find out the next time she tried to open the door. There was a time I would have called her first. Explained myself. Tried to soften the edge. But those days were done. I wiped the dust off the side table, opened all the windows, changed the sheets, removed the extra set she kept in the hallway closet, the ones with the embroidered L on the corner. Then I opened the drawer in the kitchen where I kept extra keys. Took out hers, dropped it in a small brown envelope, no longer needed. I placed it in the folder when I got home. I didn't offer groceries for the next trip. I didn't check her list or prep the guest room. No more access just in case, because there had been too many just-in-case moments. Just in case they didn't plan a meal. Just in case the utilities lapsed. Just in case they needed an escape, a buffer, a fallback. And I had been that buffer for years, stretching myself thin while they lived full. Not anymore. That afternoon, I made a sandwich. Ate it at my own table. Took out a yellow notepad and started listing all the accounts Lara still had access to. One by one, I drew lines through them. Bank, backup emergency contact, Costco membership, even the family Netflix account. I made the calls, clicked the links, changed the passwords. No anger, just clarity. If she had chosen another life, another family, another place to build her roots, then let her build them, but not with my spare key. I tucked the notepad beside the folder and leaned back in my chair, letting the stillness hold me. I'd always believed love meant being available, but sometimes love is the door you quietly lock after realizing you've been standing in the hallway of your own life. I reached for my phone. A new message had arrived. From Lara. One line. Hey, do you know if the hot water at the lake house is acting up again? I didn't reply. Instead, I turned off my phone, opened a new page in the folder, and started writing. It was a small brunch. Just 8 people, all seated around a long white table at a downtown restaurant Lara picked. She said she wanted something low-key and elegant. I wore the blouse she complimented last year, the one she said made me look put together without trying. When I arrived, I saw they'd already ordered mimosas. Someone had taken the seat beside her, Darla. Of course, Lara smiled when she saw me, but it was the kind of smile people give the neighbor who shows up to a party out of obligation. She waved her hand toward the only empty chair. At the far end, I sat, smiled. Didn't mention that I hadn't been included in the group text about the brunch. I only knew about it because Marianne forwarded the screenshot. Thought you'd want to be there, she'd written. The server brought coffee. I sipped quietly. No one asked how I was. No one asked if I needed anything. Lara leaned in close to Darla during most of the meal, giggling about something they'd seen at the florist's. I picked at my fruit salad, trying to ignore the low ache in my chest. Then, just as the server poured more champagne, it happened. Darla placed a gentle hand on Lara's arm and said, "We're just so excited to help. I hope we're not overstepping." And Lara laughed, soft and affectionate. "Oh, please, you're more like a mom to me." The table cooed. Darla's eyes sparkled. Grant beamed. My hand trembled so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. I set it down and folded my fingers in my lap. No one looked my way. She said it like it was a compliment, like it was harmless, but it landed like a dismissal. Not "you're another mother to me," not one of the moms in my life, more like a mom to me, as if I were the placeholder, as if the years I'd spent raising her band-aids, fevers, recitals, heartbreaks were a warm-up for someone else's main role. I bit the inside of my cheek, kept my eyes fixed on a crack in the wooden table. No one noticed. Later, as we stood to leave, Lara hugged Darla first, whispered something in her ear. Darla laughed again. When Lara turned to me, I offered a smile, but my arms stayed at my sides. "I'll call you soon," she said. I nodded. I already knew she wouldn't. Back at home, I opened the folder and added a new page. I wrote just one line. She called someone else mom, and meant it. Then I closed it and walked to the kitchen where the coffee from that morning still sat in the pot. I dumped it out, made a fresh one. And with the first sip, I felt something in me settle. She had made her choice. It was time I made mine. It started 3 days after I cut the last card. First it was Lara. "Mom, I just saw the account is frozen. Did something happen?" Her tone was tight, trying to be composed, but I could hear the panic creeping in. Not about me, about the inconvenience. I didn't answer her question. I simply said, "I'm sure you'll figure it out." She paused. "Wait, are you serious right now?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't soften either. "I'm serious." She hung up without saying goodbye. The next day, Grant called. He rarely ever called me. In fact, I can't remember a time he used my number unless Lara handed him the phone. "Hi, Ramona." He began, his voice cautious, like he was speaking to a client, instead of the woman who helped cover their house deposit. "I think maybe there's been a miscommunication. We just want to get back on the same page." I let him speak. I let him say words like misunderstanding and emotionally charged decisions. Then I asked Grant, "When did you last thank me?" There was silence. I could hear him breathing, maybe looking for a safe answer. I filled it for him. "I don't need apologies. I need distance." He muttered something about hoping things would cool off. I told him not to call again. That evening, the doorbell rang. I didn't answer. A voicemail came in 20 minutes later. "Darla. Ramona, this is getting out of hand. Emily Lara is devastated. No one meant to hurt you. You're overreacting. And frankly, this kind of behavior puts unnecessary stress on everyone. We're all trying our best here. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't say, let's talk. She just wanted the discomfort to go away. But I've lived with discomfort longer than they know. I listened to her message twice. Then I deleted it. That night, Lara called again. The third time that week. I picked up. Her voice was sharp, defensive. This is too extreme, Mom. I don't know what's going on with you lately, but it's not okay. You're making a statement, I get it. But this isn't how families solve things. I stayed quiet until she stopped talking. Then I said, I remember everything now. She hesitated. What does that mean? It means I stopped editing the past to make it easier to love you. She went quiet. I didn't wait for her to respond. I'm not asking you to understand, I said, but I'm done pretending I wasn't erased. She whispered I didn't mean to, but intention had never been the problem. I told her I had to go. I hung up before she could argue. Then I got up, poured a fresh cup of coffee, and walked it out to the back porch. The air was cool, the sky soft with early evening. And for the first time in years, the silence around me didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Inside, the phone started buzzing again. I didn't move. I didn't look. Some people only call when the card gets declined. Others only show up when their seat at the table disappears. Let them. I was finally setting mine for one. It was a Saturday. Late morning. I had just finished folding laundry and was putting away the last of the towels when I heard the knock. Not the light tap of a delivery or the polite knock of a neighbor. This one was urgent. I opened the door and there she was. Lara. Hair pulled into a loose bun, sunglasses on, but I could see her eyes were red. She hadn't been crying just now, but recently. Maybe in the car. Maybe the night before. She didn't say hello. Didn't even step forward. Why are you doing this to me? She asked. Not, how are you? Not, can we talk? Just straight to the injury. Hers. I held the door frame gently, kept my body still. I'm not doing anything to you, I said, voice even. I'm just no longer doing everything for you. Her face crumpled. You cut me off. You changed the locks. You won't answer my texts. I didn't interrupt. I let her list it all. When she ran out of breath, I said, because you erased me, Lara. I'm just honoring the absence. She blinked, stunned for a moment. I didn't erase you. That's not fair. No. Her silence was loud. I stepped aside, not to invite her in, but to lean on the wall just inside the door. I gave without asking. I supported without conditions. And you replaced me slowly, publicly, then permanently. And now the only reason you're here is because the support stopped. That's not true, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. You didn't come when I was quiet, I said. You came when it got inconvenient. She crossed her arms. Defensive. Hurt. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I know. That's the part that hurts most. We stood there. Two women with matching stubborn streaks, the same chin, the same quick temper. But I wasn't angry. Not anymore. Just done. She looked down at her feet. You were always so strong, she said. I guess I thought you didn't need much. That's the story you liked, because it let you take without guilt. She didn't respond. I didn't ask her to. After a few seconds, she said, so what now? I looked at her. This daughter I'd raised, this stranger who kept showing up only when things broke. I think you should go, I said. I think we both need time to figure out what love looks like when it's not based on transaction. Her lip trembled. I didn't offer a hug. She turned, slowly walked down the steps, and back toward the car I hadn't helped pay for. She didn't slam the door. She didn't look back, and I didn't cry. I just shut the door, walked back to the kitchen, and took the kettle off the stove. I poured myself a cup, sat down, and watched the steam rise. One boundary at a time, I was learning how to love without being used, and how to be alone without being erased. The next message didn't come through a call. It came in a voice note, 42 seconds long. Lara's voice trembled the way it used to when she didn't get her way as a child. Only now it wasn't about missing dessert or staying out past curfew. It was about money, control, attention. "After everything I've done," she said, "you're abandoning me." I didn't respond right away. I let the phone rest on the counter while I made my coffee. Not out of drama, just peace. For once, I didn't feel the pull to fix the pain someone else caused themselves. I sat at the table and listened again. "After everything I've done," the words echoed like a performance. A carefully chosen line meant to flip the story. So I pressed record and gave her mine. "You mean everything you did after taking everything I gave?" I didn't shout. I didn't need to. I tapped send and let it go. 5 minutes later, another message. "You act like I never appreciated you. You think I didn't care. But you were always so cold, so distant." I stared at the phone, then turned it face down on the table. She didn't appreciate me. She needed me. There's a difference. And when the needing stopped, so did the remembering. I went to the hall closet and took out the folder again. "What love paid for," still neatly written in black ink on the front. I sat on the floor and flipped through it slowly. Receipts, bank transfers, screenshots of text threads, airline confirmation emails from flying out to help her move. A printout of the tuition statement I covered her last year of school when she'd nearly lost her financial aid. The overdraft I covered when she missed her rent during the internship. She was right. It was after everything. After the giving. After the forgetting. After I faded into convenience. So yes, after everything I was finally done. That night, I burned copies of the documents. Not out of spite. Just ceremony. The originals I'd keep just in case anyone needed reminding. But the duplicates, the extras, the parts I kept in case I ever had to prove my worth, I let them curl and darken in the backyard fire pit. I didn't watch the flames. I watched the sky. The silence that followed wasn't angry. It was clean. I rinsed my mug, turned off the porch light, and headed upstairs. Whatever came next, I'd meet it with eyes wide open. The email came the morning after the wedding. I hadn't checked my inbox in days, but something compelled me to open it while my coffee steeped. Subject, about the wedding. I almost deleted it unread, but the name Carla R. caught my attention. The wedding planner. Her message was brief, polite, but it carried more weight than she realized. "Hi, Ramona. I just wanted to say I saw your daughter's face when someone asked where her mother was." She froze. It said more than words ever could. There were no attachments, no apology, no request. Just that. I read it twice. I didn't feel vindicated, or smug, or cruel. If anything, I felt hollow. Not broken, just emptied. There had been a time not too long ago when I would have given anything to hear that Lara missed me, that something cracked her surface, that maybe deep down she remembered where she came from. But not now, not after everything. I deleted the email. Not in anger, but with intention, because I knew what that message was really saying. You mattered in your absence, but I hadn't been asked to matter in her presence. Not at the engagement dinner, not at the bridal fittings, not during planning, not during crises, not when they posed in matching pajamas at Christmas while I sat home folding hand towels alone. Now, when it was inconvenient to explain my absence, she froze. Of course she did. Because it's easier to erase someone quietly than to answer for their silence publicly. I closed the laptop, washed the coffee mug, swept the kitchen floor even though it didn't need it. The house was quiet. I didn't cry. Instead, I walked to the back porch and took a long breath. It wasn't peace. Not yet. But it was the beginning of something else. A kind of distance that didn't ache, that didn't beg to be closed. It just was I thought of her standing there in her gown, probably smiling for the cameras, probably avoiding questions. I wondered if Darla filled the gap with grace and charm. She probably did. I wasn't angry at Darla anymore. She had only stepped where Lara invited her. That was the hardest part to accept. That it wasn't theft. It was permission. Lara had made her choices. And I had finally made mine. I stepped inside, folded the last towel, and placed it in the linen cabinet. That email would never be reread. That wedding would never be relived. And the mother they asked about, well, she was home drinking her coffee. Not forgotten. Just done pretending she wasn't. I arrived at the lake house just before dusk. The gravel crunched beneath the tires, the porch light flickered to life the way it always did, just a half-second late. I unlocked the door with my own key. No spare under the mat. No key left for Lara. The silence inside greeted me like an old friend. Not cold, not empty, just honest. I unpacked lightly. One bag, a sweater, a book I hadn't finished since last fall. The fire took a few tries. The kindling was stubborn, but I didn't mind. I sat close and let it breathe, feeding it slowly. Once it caught, it danced high, crackling in that way that reminded me why I always kept this house. Not for guests, not for legacy, but for this. For the sound of my own breath in a quiet room. I brewed coffee, strong, plain, unflavored. No cinnamon, no sweet creamers, just black. I sipped slowly, my hands wrapped around the mug, my knees pulled close on the worn leather chair by the window. Outside, the lake was still. The sky had that soft blue tint that comes before night finally settles. I opened the book and began reading aloud, not for anyone. Not even for myself, really. Just to hear something honest in the room. The words didn't have to matter. They just had to be mine. I reached the end of a chapter and closed the book gently, letting it rest on my lap. No applause, no interruption, just the sound of fire wind and the slow creak of this place settling into night. It had always been mine, but now it felt like mine. I wasn't waiting for a knock. I wasn't bracing for a phone call. I had turned off the ringer before I left. I didn't check messages. I didn't scroll. I gave no explanations. Sent no updates. If anyone asked where I was, they'd have to wonder. That was enough. I poured a second cup and stepped out onto the deck, the boards cool under my feet. The stars were starting to stretch across the sky, and for the first time in months, I realized I didn't miss the noise. I didn't miss being someone's emergency contact. I didn't miss being someone's backup plan. The lake didn't care who showed up. It just reflected whatever stood before it. I stood in that reflection, unrushed, unapologetic, and as the wind picked up and the fire dipped low inside, I knew something was finally beginning. Not healing, not quite, but the space for it. The kind of space you can only find when no one is watching. I didn't rush it. The folder sat on the table for 3 days before I opened it again. Not because I was unsure, but because I wanted my hands to be steady. No emotion, no second guessing, just clarity. I drove into town early, just as the office opened. No appointment. Just walked in holding a manila envelope with tabs, statements, notes, and a single sheet marked with a yellow sticky that read, "Update immediately." The paralegal recognized me. She smiled, called me by name, and offered water. I declined. 10 minutes later, I sat across from a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and quiet understanding. No judgment. No questions beyond the legal ones. "Are you certain?" she asked as she scanned the document with Lara's name circled 3 times in red ink. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm just done building safety nets for people who cut the ropes." She nodded. She'd heard worse. She'd seen worse. We went line by line. Lara's name, once listed as sole beneficiary, was removed. Successor trustee changed. Medical proxy changed. Power of attorney gone. The summer house, the checking accounts, the emergency fund all reassigned, not out of spite, out of order. It was like sweeping out a house after a storm. The damage had already been done. This was just the cleanup. When we finished, I signed the final page. My name looked firmer than it had in years. The lawyer handed me a new copy of everything neatly bound and dated. No letter, she asked. No explanation to attach. No, I said. If she ever wonders, she can look at the silence and count the years she gave it to me first. Back at home, I tucked the new documents into the safe. No dramatic burn pile. No emails drafted and deleted. No announcements. This wasn't a warning shot. This was the door quietly closing. She had been given decades of yes. This was just my first no. I made lunch simple, warm enough. And when I sat down to eat, I didn't think about who might call. Because for once, I didn't owe anyone an answer. Not for loving. Not for leaving. Only for finally choosing myself. And once I had everything else, began to fall into place. The ground thawed early this year. By the second week of March, I could push my fingers into the soil without meeting ice. There was something forgiving about that, like the earth was offering a fresh start before I even asked for it. I cleared the old patch behind the kitchen, pulled out last year's weeds with both hands, let the wind carry away the brittle remnants of what never took root. No gloves, just me and dirt and memory. I planted basil first. The scent stayed on my hands long after I washed them. Then parsley. A few rows of thyme. I didn't label anything this time. I'd know what was what by the leaves, by the feel of it all. Each morning, I brought my coffee out to the back step and sat facing the garden. No calls, no texts, just the green breaking through slow and honest. The invitation still sat in the drawer beside the fridge. Ivory cardstock. Pale gold script. The kind of paper meant to feel expensive. I hadn't opened it since the day I received it. I didn't need to. Weddings are for those who show up in the photo albums. I had stopped chasing a seat at that table. I wasn't angry. Anger is loud, messy. It wants witnesses. This what I had now was quieter. But it stayed. Like the mint I planted near the back fence. It crept slowly, persistently, until it claimed its space. I repainted the kitchen window frame, fixed the screen that had always snagged. I wiped down the patio chairs and didn't think about who might sit in them with me. This garden wasn't for anyone else, not to impress, not to earn back affection, not to prove anything. It was just mine. It felt strange at first to wake up without the pull of someone else's crisis. No bank alerts. No teary phone calls. No one asking if I could cover just this once. Instead, I had dirt under my nails, steam rising from black coffee, a growing row of green things reaching toward the sun without permission. I liked who I was in that garden. Unneeded, unburdened, still here, still tending, and finally, growing something that gave back.